Hey, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk about something that really changed my entire experience of practicing an instrument: meditation. I started to apply principles of meditation to my piano practice, and it's never been the same since. Not only did my practices become more enjoyable, but my learning became more efficient, and I was able to reap the other mental, emotional, and physiological benefits of meditation. To better understand how this works, I need to give you a little bit of context. I'm an anxious person by nature, but in 2018, I went through a really rough period in my life where I was going through a lot of changes. I had lost my job, I was going through a lot of personal relationship things, and the combination of all of that happening at the same time made me so stressed and anxious that it was debilitating. I couldn't do anything without my brain jumping to conclusions and creating scenarios about things that haven't even happened. It forced me to find some kind of solution, and I found it in meditation. After just one day of meditating, I felt immediate effects. I was lighter, calmer, less anxious. When I saw how effective it was, I went in hard. I started meditating every single day, sometimes twice a day. I started to do research to try to understand why it was working and what it was doing to my mind and my body. In my research, I came across this book by James Kingsland called Siddhartha's Brain: Unlocking the Ancient Science of Enlightenment. For those of you who don't know, Siddhartha is Buddha, and this book takes a look at his teachings and explains why they work with evidence-based science. It states that when we undergo stress, we trigger the fight or flight response in our bodies. This increases things like heart rate, blood pressure, glucose levels, breathing, and muscle tension. A scientist named Herbert Benson did a study on a group of meditators who practiced transcendental meditation. He found that while they were meditating, they were actually able to reverse the effects of fight or flight. He calls this the relaxation response. To better understand how this works, I want to read a little section from the book. If the relaxation response was the opposite of the fight or flight response, there should be other ways of evoking it, he reasoned. There's more than one way to evoke stress, and this is the opposite. He started to investigate other forms of meditation. Far from being unique to TM, he found that focusing attention exclusively on a body movement, as in yoga, the breath, a word, a sound, or a repetitive prayer triggered exactly the same physiological response in research subjects. There were two common factors in all of these practices. The first seemed to be that they stemmed the cascade of regular thought. The second was that when thoughts wandered into the mind, the meditator accepted them impassively, but quickly returned his or her attention to whatever it was they were repeating. Benson is saying when we slow our brains down and just concentrate on one thing, as you often would in multiple kinds of meditations, we're able to rebalance the chemicals that happen in our body and reverse the effects of stress. It's single-pointed concentration that makes meditation work. When I read this, it made me think, well, there's so many other things that we can turn into meditation then, if it's not just limited to the breath or a specific mantra. Benson actually tested this theory by having meditators repeat the word one instead of a specific mantra, and he found that they were still able to induce the relaxation response and reverse the effects of fight or flight. But how do we turn our music practice into a meditation? If any of you guys have taken a yoga class before, sometimes at the end of the class, they'll have you do a body scan. So you'll either lay or sit with your eyes closed and concentrate all of your attention on feeling the top of your head, then your face, throat, center of your chest, pit of your stomach, all the way down to your feet. This type of meditation isn't too different from practicing an instrument if you think about it. While we're practicing, we usually focus our attention on specific parts of our body while engaging our listening at the same time. This is what I like to call mindful practice. While I'm practicing, I'll pick a specific thing to focus on. It could be something physical like hands or elbows, or it could be concentrating all of my attention on listening to the sounds. But like in a meditation, the goal is to keep your mind focused on this one thing. And if at any time your mind drifts, you simply notice it without judgment and return your attention back to whatever it is that you are focusing on. I found the best way to start applying this to your practice is by working in sections. As I play through repetitions of this section, I'm going to pick one thing to concentrate on. Right now, I'm focusing all of my attention on my elbows, feeling their position in comparison to my hands and body, feeling how much weight is being transferred from my elbows to my hands. If at any time my mind drifts, which it will, I simply notice it and return my attention back to my elbows. Once that feels comfortable, I'm going to repeat the section again, but this time I'm going to focus all of my attention on feeling my body relax. Again, I'm just trying to keep my attention on one thing, the sensation of feeling relaxed in my arms, hands, and body. If the mind drifts, I just notice it and return my attention back to feeling relaxation. Each time I repeat the section, I choose one thing to focus on. Other points of concentration you can use are arm weight like I'm doing here, feeling the weight transfer from finger to finger. Your hands, feeling the coordination between your right and left hands. Your posture, making sure you're sitting tall with a comfortable, straight spine. Elbow position is especially helpful for learning things like jumps. The elbow is what leads the arm and hand, so when we focus all our attention on their position, we can quickly memorize the distance of jumps. When I narrow my attention to just focus on one thing at a time, I notice that whatever I'm learning, I'll retain it so much faster and easier. It kind of makes sense though, because you're not allowing your brain to wander around as much. If you're trying to learn something, but your brain is constantly drifting to think about the last text message you received or what you need to buy at the grocery store later, of course, it's going to take longer to learn. I also want to stress that the things we choose to concentrate on don't always need to be physical. In fact, one of the most useful points of concentration I use is sound. When I'm able to focus all of my attention on just listening to the sounds, I'm able to hear so many more details in phrasing, texture, and tone that I probably wouldn't have noticed otherwise. Keeping a clear mind and just listening and enjoying the sounds that you're creating feels like letting go of control and allowing the music to just take over and flow. This is the state I like to be in when I'm performing as well, and the easiest way I found to get there is by concentrating all of my attention on just listening. That being said, one of the most difficult challenges you might come across is keeping a clear mind. When I first started doing mindful practice, one of the things I really had to fight against was the negative and critiquing voice that was in my mind. While I was playing, if I made a mistake, I would be really hard on myself. Or even if I didn't make a mistake, I would still critique myself on why it didn't sound better. Over time, this just made me feel so frustrated. It was hard on my self-esteem, and it just made practice not fun. It takes a shift in perspective. I had to start looking at those negative thoughts no differently than any other passing thought that would happen in my brain. When those negative and critiquing comments would happen, I treated them exactly the same as if my mind wandered to think about what I'm going to have for dinner later. the more that I'm able to observe these negative thoughts passively without giving into them or reacting, the less frequently that they happened, and now they actually hardly happen at all. When we're able to quiet that negative voice, we can observe mistakes when they happen objectively without being hard on ourselves. It also allows us to enjoy the spontaneity of making music more and appreciate that every time we play something, it's gonna sound different and new. Whenever I play piano now, I try to keep my mind as clear and still as possible. Playing from a still mind, I think, is the key to playing with expression. It means that I'm listening to my music more closely, that I'm able to react and be spontaneous in the moment, and I'm allowing the expression to come from my soul, not from my body and not from my mind. The mind wants to control, but when we still the mind, the music is able to come from a deeper place within. It's from this place that we're able to play with freedom, expression, and emotion. That's it for this video. I really hope that you found it helpful because this has really changed my entire perspective on practicing and my approach to music. If you've ever practiced like this before, please let me know in the comments what your experience was like and how it's helped you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.